Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today about smarter searches with FSTA. My name is Megan Kowalski, and I am the Outreach and Reference Librarian from the UDC Library. Today, our webinar is going to be hosted by Carol Durham, who is from IFAS, and she's going to walk us through this great information about why you would like to use the FSTA database instead of maybe an AI tool. So, Carol, thank you for being with us today, and we look forward to hearing from you. And just to let you know, we will have time for questions at the end, but please don't hesitate to put them in the chat as they come up. So thank you, Carol.
Thank you, Megan. It's a pleasure to be here. So hello and welcome to this webinar about FSTA, Food Science and Technology Abstracts. As Megan said, my name's Carol Durham. I'm Head of Sales and Partnerships at IFAS. IFAS is the publisher of the FSTA database, and you have access to this database at the University of the District of Columbia. Thank you very much for joining me today. I'm going to talk through how you can use FSTA to support your academic work, and you'll learn about how FSTA stands apart from AI tools and other online resources, and why it's the go-to source for reliable, peer-reviewed information in food, nutrition, and related fields. So whether you're writing a paper, preparing for a project, or you simply want to sharpen your research skills, hopefully this session will help you to really understand how FSTA can support you in that. So just a little bit about us. We are the International Food Information Service. We're a not-for-profit publisher, and we're an educational charity in the sciences of food and health. And we were founded in the late 1960s, and our mission is to connect people with trusted food, health, and nutrition science through expert curation and innovative discovery tools. So what do? Well, we help people to discover high quality scientific research relating to food science and nutrition from across the globe. So we do that by sourcing content from across multiple disciplines and various publication types. So first of all, we set the scope. So there are multiple disciplines that interrelate across the fields of food science, technology, and nutrition. And so we don't just look at incorporating food journals, we look across the board, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we move along. But then we set the standards. So we have a team of expert scientists, and they rigorously quality check our content. So they don't just do this at the start. So when a publisher might come to us and request that we include their journal in our databases, but they do it on an ongoing basis to make sure that we exclude predatory journals and we exclude fake information and dubious sources. So when we've done all that, we then index and tag the content using the FSTA thesaurus, which really just makes it all very easy to discover. So what is FSTA? FSTA, or Food Science and Technology Abstracts, to give it its full name, is the world's most comprehensive database that's dedicated to food, beverage, and nutrition science. So unlike broad scientific databases, FSTA is expertly curated to ensure that every record is relevant to the food sector, which makes it an invaluable tool for those people who are working in or studying food and health and nutrition. It includes over 2.2 million records, and the content is updated every single week. So you can set up alerts to make sure that you receive the latest research straight into your inbox every week. So FSTA with full text provides faster insights into global food innovation, sustainability, consumer trends, food chemistry, nutrition therapy, disease prevention, and much, much more across a variety of disciplines. FSTA with full text provides a single point of access to authoritative food and nutrition science. So unlike your general databases, it's entirely food focused, and the full text provision ensures immediate access to thousands of leading journals, saving you time and resources as well. So the FSTA thesaurus is the world's most comprehensive food and beverage thesaurus, and it includes just under 17,000 terms that are directly relevant to food science, technology, and human nutrition, as well as the development, manufacture, and retail of foods and beverages. The terms are identified by the IFAS in-house expert science team to ensure accurate coverage of emerging topics and relevance to global food research and development and those allied fields, allied disciplines as well. And the whole supply chain from the farm gate through to the consumer is covered. So here you can see a graphic that shows the terms within the FSTA thesaurus. So I'm just going to go through it. I know it's not that easy to sort of see exactly what everything relates to. So I'll talk it through. There are more than 3,300 foods and beverages included in FSTA. There are 1,800 food relevant chemical compounds, toxins and pesticides, 1,500 microorganisms, 800 food additives, 700 terms specifically covering nutrition, health, and consumer behaviour. There are 550 herbs, spices, and medicinal plants, 500 manufacturing processes and related equipment, 350 enzymes, 300 analytical methods, and 200 terms for packaging and labelling. And then there are 4,300 synonyms and variants also included, and they indicate the appropriate term to be used for tagging the content. The terms are structured into 330 groups where they are organised hierarchically from general terms down to specific terms with up to 11 levels. So we do this all behind the scenes, and that means that FSTA can help you find exactly what you're looking for. So whether you're searching with familiar keywords or you're discovering new ones you might never have thought to use, by organising those thousands of terms and synonyms into clear, connected groups, the thesaurus makes exploring food and nutrition research really simple and accurate and surprisingly intuitive as well. You can see from the next slide the breadth of the subject areas that are captured in FSTA, from food supply, nutrition and health, to supply chain, to marketing, to pharmacology, and much more. All of the content is anchored within food, but the database has got relevance to many areas across disciplines. So from food and health to marketing and further beyond, FSTA really helps you to see how all these areas can connect together in one food-focused view of research. So an example might be if you were, say, looking for content on eating disorders or obesity, you might not think of going to a psychology journal, but you can see here from this graph that we include all content that comes from these areas that are not directly relevant to food but link into it, and we index the content at article level, so not at journal title level. So for example, if we talk about psychology and think about a general psychology journal, it wouldn't necessarily have a huge amount of content that's related to food. So we wouldn't bring all of that content into FSTA. What we do is we index the content at the article level. So if there are a handful of articles across a whole volume of a journal that only relate to food, then those are indexed in FSTA, and the irrelevant articles that are more around more general psychology are not included. So you can see here a few examples of the hierarchy within the FSTA thesaurus. So we can see that it's covering broader terms, narrower terms, you have related terms, and then you will also sometimes see that we have a used for example, and then also sometimes there is a scope note to show when a term was either added or when it might have been changed. And you can see another example here. If we look at nutrition, you've got the broader term there is biology. Narrower terms, you've got things like diet, nutritional status, nutritional therapy, public health nutrition, and then you've got related terms as well, such as dietetic foods or food systems. So really what this does is it bridges the gap between the technical and the everyday language as well. So it makes searches much smarter and faster and more intuitive. So you don't have to actually speak food science language to get the right results. So how does FSTA support food-related research? Well, first of all, FSTA allows for the discovery of unique content. And that's really important because it includes content that you wouldn't find necessarily in other online tools that you might be familiar with. So you might be using CAB Abstracts or PubMed or Web of Science. And we have a large amount of content in FSTA that's not within those databases. So there's a lot of unique content in FSTA. It's more accurate than an AI tool like ChatGPT, and there'll be more to come on that in a few minutes. And it's more reliable than Google Scholar. It saves people time by enabling them to actually be right the first time. So people often think about, oh, we'll just quickly use an AI tool to find some information, but then they realize that that actually doesn't save them time. They end up spending a lot more time trying to work out what's accurate and what isn't. And what FSTA does, it gets you to the right content the first time. So you find what you need when you need it without having to sort of sift through all that background noise or missing out potentially on some critical details as well. It ensures the quality of the results. So obviously we screen for predatory publishers, for fake information, for hijacked journals. So they're not included. It provides comprehensive search results across the disciplines, as we've seen in the previous slide. And it's unbiased and inclusive. So the content indexed in FSTA is really based on its scope and its quality. So that's regardless of the location of the publisher, the location of the paper, or indeed the impact factor of the journal. So it allows for the discovery of many different types of content in one search as well. So when you do a search in FSTA, you're going to get back journal articles, but you're also going to get back patents, conference proceedings, books, book chapters, theses, just to name a few. It includes multidisciplinary content, so that can help users find information really quickly. And we not only work with universities all over the world, but FSTA is used by large food manufacturing companies as well. So we work with them to help them to reformulate their products, do new product development, answer consumer response queries, so that they can really find the science behind the claims that they're making on their food or their labeling. And it's trustworthy. So it's free from predatory publishers and that fake information. So another important area for FSTA is around human health. So we know that people are living longer, but they're not necessarily living in better health. And FSTA includes a wide range of content that helps the users to study that connection between food and non-communicable diseases such as diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disease, etc. So the database includes relevant scientific information that wouldn't necessarily have turned up in a search of databases that are commonly used to discover health content. And that's really because with FSTA, the data is drawn from a specific set of source materials that are focused on the science of food rather than focused on the science of health. So, interestingly, of all the health-related misinformation and fake science found online, 73% of that relates to nutrition. And I say that because we have seen a recent systematic review that has been published about this in the Journal of Public Health Nutrition. And it aimed to summarize the level of quality and accuracy of nutrition-related information that's on social media, on websites, and determine really if that quality and accuracy varied between those websites and publishers and social media. So the conclusion was that the online nutrition related information is often inaccurate and of low quality. Consumers seeking information online are at risk of being misinformed. More action is needed to improve the public's e-health and media literacy and the reliability of online nutrition-related information. So that leads me nicely on to predatory journals. Now, not everybody has heard of predatory journals, and you may well not have, not heard of the term before. You might have heard of other terms that have been used to describe this, but these journals have actually been around for a long time. And I'm just going to, in the next couple of slides, cover a bit more information about them and why they're actually really quite dangerous. So they market themselves with false accolades and credentials and attempt to present themselves as prestigious journals, and they take advantage of the high pressure to be published, and they can do they can and they do publish absolutely anything, and they call it a scientific article. And they actually make up a very large amount of global scientific research output every single year. So why does that matter? Well, by failing to meet publishing and editorial standards, they can introduce into the scholarly record fake data and errors, misleading information, flawed research methods, and plagiarized content. And the cumulative nature of science means that if researchers unwittingly use unsound information from predatory journals, it potentially contaminates the whole body of knowledge, and it can damage things like funding prospects, it can hinder career development, waste money, and spread disinformation. So what do predatory journals look like? Well, this slide shows some of the common characteristics which often involve inflated claims about their quality and their services. So first of all, peer review. So predatory journals very commonly claim to undertake a thorough peer review process, but there is no evidence that any peer review is actually carried out. There's no evidence of selectivity or screening based on editorial or quality checks, because all submissions appear to be accepted in order for them to receive that article processing charge from the author. And I will show you an example of this in a moment. As well as advertising that they do peer review, predatory journals often offer a very rapid peer review, and often they say that this is just under a week. Well, that really would give insufficient time for the peer review process, which is quite lengthy, or it can be, and it's where the manuscript is scrutinised by experts in the field, and they would know whether the research within the article is relevant, and maybe does it need revising or correcting. So it's just not enough time to do that. And some predatory journals offer rapid peer review service where additional payments can be made for a faster decision. Another common issue is around fake editors and editorial boards. And this can really take various forms. So the editorial boards of deceptive journals often feature genuine scholars, and these scholars have not consented to be on the board. And they've actually got no idea that they're listed on the journal's website. And sometimes if they find out that they've been linked to a journal, it can actually be really hard to get their names removed from that journal. So the editorial board members may not be discoverable at the affiliations listed in their board entries. In fact, they might not even be real people, so they might not even exist. And for publishers with multiple journals, individuals may be featured on the boards of a large number of titles, so some of which may not even be in similar fields. Predatory journals may also state or imply that they are affiliated with prestigious institutions or societies and other organisations, and often without their knowledge or consent. And predatory journals often attempt to give the impression that they are indexed in the key journal indexes, Web of Science and Scopus, through outright false claims or deceptive means. And predatory databases share names very similar to the official mainstream sites. So there are predatory databases as well as predatory journals. So there is a site, Index Scientific Journals, which can use the acronym ISI to match the real ISI Web of Science. Therefore, a journal can claim to be listed in ISI, but this actually refers to the pay per listing site rather than the real site, which is of course free, but has a really strict inclusion criteria. Deceptive information around their location is also a common characteristic. The locations of or offices of deceptive journals or publishers are quite often not mentioned anywhere on a website, and if they are mentioned, the address is usually in the US or the UK. However, the editorial boards and author locations of the individuals listed in the journal site indicate other locations, and in some cases where they've got postcodes or zip codes, they can be put into Google Maps and searched and can yield some surprising or amusing results, shall we say. So some other common characteristics are poor production quality, poor grammar, poor use of English. And a key factor is that they will often solicit manuscripts by email with frequency. So they like to stroke people's ego. They like to say, oh, you're a great scholar, please submit to our journal, etc. And they do it repeatedly. Well, normal journals, they don't really do this at all beyond the occasional call for papers. It's common for predatory journals to have a very fast turnaround, as I mentioned on the previous slide, with that insufficient time to undertake the peer review that they claim that they do. And they often have a similar name to a legitimate journal. So they're really doing that to trick people into thinking that they are submitting to a reputable journal. And also for the subject remit of the journal to be really broad. So they're publishing research in it about everything and anything and everything, rather than being dedicated to a specific subject. But nothing around predatory journals is easy. So if a journal has one or two of these characteristics, that doesn't equate to it being a predatory journal. For example, it just might be a new journal that isn't well established and resourced yet, but the science is sound. So you should take care just to make sure. So we've looked at a few of the common characteristics. We can now look at a real world example of a predatory journal. So this is taken from a search on the search engine Google Scholar. So the article that we're going to look at in a minute was published by an ornithologist, and he'd received many emails from this predatory publisher asking him to pay to publish with them, and he got very frustrated with this and he wanted to put it to the test. So he did manage to persuade them to include his paper free of charge, on the understanding that he was going to publish lots more with them. So he wanted to test this process and just really see if he could get his fake article published in the Scientific Journal of Research and Reviews. And he was successful, and his published article is entitled, "What's the Deal with Birds?" Well, if you read the abstract, you can see here, he's saying birds are pretty weird. I mean, they have feathers. Most animals don't have feathers. To investigate the issue, I looked at some birds, etc. So then another area here is one of the graphs that was in the article. Looking at figure 1, he writes, it looks like a fish, it's got a weird beak. It's very clearly a spoof article, but it's not normally as easy to recognize that an article hasn't been peer reviewed and is published in a predatory journal. So if you look at another article that's been published in the same journal, the first reference of recent FAO reports is very general, and it also cites someone's magister's dissertation. So you can see here that it lacks the rigor that you would expect. It might look, this article here, it does look legitimate on first glance. It's not my area of expertise. It looks fine to me. But it's been published in the same issue of the same journal as that spoof article. So it might be fantastic. I don't know, but it's sitting alongside an article which has very clearly not been peer reviewed. And that has to make you question the scientific rigor of every article in that journal. And you need to know that you can trust what you're reading and citing, and where you are publishing as well, your own research. So as part of our educational mission, our website includes, we've got quite a lot of information actually around predatory publishing, and you can find out more. So you can look up common characteristics and resources and tools to help you to search and also to publish with confidence, as well as some links to some further reading. So I mentioned how the IFIS scientists do screen and identify and exclude predatory journals, and how they check for, previous slide, how they check for fake information and ensure that only quality content is indexed in FSTA. But this isn't just a one-off process. So we don't just do this at the very beginning when we have a submission for a journal to be included in FSTA. We actually continue to do it. So once it's been indexed, it's not forgotten about. And here you can see an example of what is known as a hijacked journal. Again, another term that may well not be familiar with. It's quite a new term. It's quite a new process that we've found is happening now. So our editorial team complete monthly checks, and in this particular case for this journal, they noticed that the publishing frequency had very randomly changed and the article numbers had jumped up. So the journal had moved from 4 to 10 issues a year plus 3 special issues. And all of the 2024 issues showed spiking article numbers. And this was back in 2024, and all the articles for 2025 were already alive. So they next went on to check the domain name, and that had stayed the same, but the URL, as you can see, had changed very, very slightly. So they did some deeper analysis, and then they found some out of scope content. So this obviously is a food science journal, and they found articles that had strategies to teach vocabulary to ESL students and a study on electrochemical noise from steel rebars. Completely out of scope for this journal. No address was given on the Contact Us page, whereas when we'd carried out our original predatory assessment, which is one of the areas, we do a 60-point assessment, and one of the areas is that there's an address and we check out that address. So that wasn't apparent anymore. And the DOIs, the document object identifiers, didn't appear to be correct when they were checked against Crossref's DOI resolver. So the editorial team took the decision to stop indexing this title and remove it from our database. So we've talked about that misinformation and predatory and hijacked journals. If we now look at AI, I'm sure that you're all using it. I certainly am myself, and I think it's fantastic for many things. And it's important to recognize that when it's used correctly, AI is a tool that's very helpful, and it can enrich educational outcomes. So when it's done well, it can spark ideas and related concepts, especially when students are staring at a blank page. It can reduce that sort of fear to start barrier by generating first angles, outlines, or keyword lists. So you can begin to move forward and then sort of refine what you're looking for. You can use it to suggest synonyms and adjacent terms that can translate into stronger database queries. And it can free up time for critical reading and comparison and synthesis. So I think it's important to think about AI as a starting point, not an end point. So let it help overcome the initial friction and seed better search terms, and then shift into the library resources for the evidence and the citation. So those benefits that we saw only hold with scaffolding and verification. So without that, the same features actually then become liabilities. So we could be at risk of treating a brainstorm as a conclusion, and then errors creep in because things are unchecked, and citations are the first place where the problems surface. And when using AI tools, we have to always be aware that they may and often do hallucinate. So they make things up and often look great on the surface, but they're not actually accurate. They may show rather opaque sources, meaning that there's little or no way to verify where the information came from. So we don't really know its origin. Bias and omission mean some viewpoints are left out or twisted. Important context can get lost, while the most popular or powerful opinions can get the most attention. And skills can erode. So users just tend to do less deep reading, they do less evaluation and synthesis, and that just means that they become more likely to accept information at face value instead of thinking critically or making their own informed judgments. And a peer review scientific report study by Walters and Wilder in 2023 found that GPT 3.5 fabricated 55% of citations, and 43% of its real citations had major errors, while GPT-4 fabricated 18% and 24% of its real citations had major errors. And that's why it's so important to check and confirm every citation that you find in AI generated results if you're using them. And just wanted to share this real example from our workflow, just to demonstrate how hard it can be to spot a false citation and show why it's such a detailed analysis really is necessary. So we asked an AI tool to reorder a real bibliography by relevance, and it did so. And it also quietly inserted this extra reference that you can see on the screen. And on screen, it looks perfect, looks like a real journal, realistic volume and issue. and it has a very Wiley looking article number. So Wiley, the publisher, their article numbers do look like this. So we verified it in a few minutes, actually. So in the journal table of contents check, Stark volume 76, 3 to 4, 2024, no such article was actually listed. Title Crossref Scholar Search, the exact title returns no record, which is typical when a citation is fabricated. The numbering mimicry, so the 2200206 pattern, it mimics Wiley's article number style. So, for example, other Wiley journals use numbers like 2200706. And this just shows that AI can copy the format convincingly while inventing the content. So it's so persuasive. The title sort of stitches together very common starch phrases. So obviously this is a food science journal around starch. So the phrases functional, physiochemical, morphological, dual modification, they frequently appear in genuine starch papers. So it sounds right, even when it's not. So as mentioned previously, AI tools are a great way to sort of start out. So for helping with the generation of ideas, finding extra keywords, etc. But when you look online on Google, for example, or using an AI tool, you have to think about what everything really means. So the information you find this way, it could refer to anything. So it could be from trusted research, or it could come from something completely unverified, or a blog post or anything really. And it's easy to find information, but that doesn't always make it reliable and suitable for studies and research. In FSTA, journals are human vetted to exclude predatory titles. Records are anchored to the scholarly literature, and concepts are tied into that controlled vocabulary. So vitamin C, for example, also works on ascorbic acid, and nothing important slips past because of wording. Every hit is a citable publication with full metadata, and the index is updated weekly across both open access publications and subscription sources. So we suggest that you let AI help you decide what to look for, and then you use your library resource such as FSTA to confirm what's true, and you cite it correctly as well. So I hope you found this interesting and useful. You have access to the FSTA with full text database at the University of the District of Columbia via the EBSCO platform. So to ensure that you're using verified high quality content in your studies and research, use FSTA. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, or you feel free to email me. Here is my email address, and thank you very much for your time today. So please do get in touch. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carol. That was wonderful. I know it's always a good reminder as to what AI is good for versus what you might not want to use it for. I know we have seen several completely made up citations come to the reference desk. So, it's always a good reminder of how these things get made. So if there are any questions, please feel free to either unmute or drop them in the chat. All right, not seeing anything come in. I am going to go ahead and say thank you and stop the recording.
Thank you so much, Megan.